Verdict is a live broadcast, and the opinions expressed by the host, guests, and callers are not necessarily those of this station. The references to legal matters are based on actual cases filed in federal and state courts and are matters of public record. Every legal situation is different, and none of the information or views provided during the taping of The Verdict are meant to be legal advice. For more information about The Verdict, please visit us at www.theverdicttv.com. Hello, and welcome to The Verdict, a show where lawyers take you behind the scenes as they prosecute the most action-packed legal cases around South Florida and New York. The Verdict is all about powerful insight and analysis about how to put the law on your side. If you want to call in, you can reach us at 888-565-1470 or write us on Facebook at The Verdict. Now, let's get down to justice. Here comes The Verdict with your hosts, Jay Farrow and Janine Davis.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this episode of The Verdict. Obviously, the visual has changed. There is a new normal for us all of us that are practicing law and in the judicial system and all over across this nation. Obviously, we are now in unprecedented times. I hope to have my co-host on the phone joining us, and we are, as we promised last week, going to dive into how is this crisis going to affect the law? How is it going to affect legal proceedings? And how can we, as practitioners, invite our clients and other lawyers into resolving matters, pushing things forward, and seeing what's possible in an environment where certainly we all are now coming together as a nation to face something that in my lifetime I could never have expected. Janine, are you there?
Yes, hi everybody. I hope you can hear me. And
yeah, I can hear you.
I am okay. Great. I'm thrilled to join everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today. Yes, Jay has spoken into what is our new normal for at least the foreseeable future. And how do we get to still practice law in the time of COVID-19 and unprecedented health crisis going on? So, Jay, I'd love for you to speak into a little bit of your experience in this past week. I know that last week we mentioned that you'd be having your first ever remote mediation. So if you could speak into what that's about, that'd be fantastic.
Well, there's a lot going on, and I want to invite our viewers to also call in if they have any questions about some of the things that I just heard leading into this broadcast. Was the news that there's going to be these shelter-in-place laws from around the country and soon to come to South Florida. What does that mean? What does it mean when your business is being required to close? I mean, what are your legal implications? What are the things that are required of citizens in a circumstance like this? Because obviously, being on the street could be a crime by itself in certain circumstances. So over the last week, many laws have changed. As if you've been following what's been happening in Washington, for instance, the tax laws have been modified such that the tax returns are due, I think, on July the 15th. There's a lot of changes. I'm sure a lot of people have a lot of questions, and what we're attempting to create here is an avenue to have some of those questions answered. What is going on in the ground floor as far as legal proceedings are concerned? How are cases being pushed forward? What is it? What does it mean to have a courthouse closure, which has happened in Broward, West Palm, and Dade County? And what's going on? I mean, certainly the good news is that, at least for the time being, that the judges and their staff have coordinated with attorneys to allow hearings to move forward telephonically. As you just pointed out, one of the things that I was able to accomplish this week in my practice was to have a mediation, which was scheduled to be in person this last week, that required people from Brazil, Alabama, Los Angeles, and certainly down here in South Florida, to get together on a mediation. It was a successful mediation, and I think that all the parties, at least in this circumstance, rose to the occasion, and mindful of the crisis. And I'll say this: all of the parties recognize that because we are in this new normal, because there are now uncertainties having to do with judicial proceedings, that's going to play a part in getting cases resolved. And I think that there was a legitimate human interaction, or shift, I should say, in let's get this resolved. We see what's happened here, and let not this be on our plate with everything else going on in the world. And I hope that, Janine, as we're talking about this, that really what we're really talking about is, instead of relying on the courthouse to have cases resolved, how do we, all of us, clients and lawyers, take it amongst ourselves to create the space to have cases resolved sooner rather than later? Because in a lot of instances, cases they have to do with money. They have to do with one person claiming that something happened and they're not happy with it, and whether that's a partnership being dissolved or whether that be an accident. How can people step to another level instead of the defensive postures that invite all kinds of form objections and delays? How do we cut through the chase? And I'm saying this for both sides. I'm saying this to the plaintiff side as well, or to the people that have been aggrieved, that, what would it look like to add a little bit of the uncertainty principle into all of this and get a case resolved. That there's a lot of opportunity here, and I experienced it this week that people, attorneys and the clients that were on the phone, took this as a opportunity to see themselves as human beings and not necessarily just in a legal battle. And it was very encouraging what we were able to accomplish.
Right. So, Jay, speaking of that, I think what you're talking about, and the theme of this show, too, is how do we leverage the human relationship, right, between client, whether it's the plaintiff or defendant side, but really, in that relationship, you're forming a triangle, right? Or actually, it's not a triangle, it's a square. It's the people on the other side, and that's the attorney and the defendants or plaintiffs, right? And then vice versa. So you've got at least 4 people in the mix of any one dispute. And I think what you're calling forth right now and have been speaking into is leveraging conversation, relationship, pushing things forward to get things resolved in a meaningful and expedient way, which will challenge the way things have gone in the future, which is a lot of delay, court finagling, using the court in order to substantiate the delays. And I think that you bring about this point of just human beings getting together to resolve an issue. Right?
Right. Absolutely. And I attempted to have this show be broadcast on Facebook, but I don't know what happened to my feed. But we can keep going as we try to resolve some technical difficulties. In the last 2 weeks, we lost the ability to go to our office. We lost the ability to have in-person depositions. I know that the federal bench issued an order canceling any in-person discovery, which is a deposition. But they are permitting, of course, paper discovery to move forward. But the ability to interact as human beings, especially in the law, is unsettling. I did have a successful mediation this last week, and that said, I could feel how the human interaction was missed at the mediation. The human interaction that people only, I think, when they get together, can actually create. Then that's obviously a story of mine, right? I mean, I like I said, we all rose to the occasion. But I know that there's a lot of questions out there about, like, what happens right now if I have a legal dispute. I mean, is it possible to even file a lawsuit? And the simple answer to that question is yes. I would say that this has presented an opportunity. This crisis has presented an opportunity for people to do some legal housekeeping at home. There's a ton of things that people take for granted in their lives that they don't necessarily check on to see if their legal affairs are in order. I mean, this is a perfect opportunity to take a look at those things. But as far as filing a lawsuit, maintaining a lawsuit, the courts are open for telephonic hearings, so things are moving forward. And at an amazing pace, as a matter of fact.
Right. So speaking to that, Jay, I think that people are curious right now. When anything changes from our day-to-day experience, what can happen to many people is like, oh, okay, so I don't have to handle that, or I can't handle it right now because things look a little different. So what could you say that people, we spoke this week about spring cleaning, and that does mean spring cleaning your life. Can you give people some ideas about, yes, filing a lawsuit is still completely possible, but what are other things in the law that you have identified over the last week that people can actually attend to during this crisis phase?
The simplest thing is to take a look at, do they have a will? This makes you think about it. Like, things like this make you think, how are my legal affairs in order? There's, what's funny, I was talking to someone the other day about their partnership agreement and the fact that they really didn't have one. And,
right.
I'm trying to restore the video feed if I can right now, so I think it may have just worked. But it's funny enough is that this really gives you the opportunity to check in and see, do I have a partnership agreement that is updated, or did I ever do it to begin with? Because in my experience, it's funny. People start businesses and they work because they work. I call it the Forrest Gump version of business, and it's not often that people take an ounce of prevention, but they'll end up spending a ton of cleaning it up. I tell people that when they're sitting in my chair, by the time they're sitting in my chair, that's a symptom of a lot of things in their life, and that we don't just take a look at what's happened right in front of them. We look at other things that are going on with them with regards to their legal affairs. And one of them is, do you have things lined up with your business partner? Do you have things lined up, with where you're investing your money, or how you're investing your money? And here's the other thing. Taking a look at investments that you had, maybe not stock investments, but maybe if this applies to you, to take a look at who's investing for you and what the and are they being effective? Did they let you know about your risk during this time? And I call it a claim analysis. I mean, I had a conversation with a few lawyers that everybody has about $1 million of claims in their mailbox. When I say their mailbox, like old mail, where things that happen between their investments, being mailed things that they shouldn't have been mailed, or just in their personal effects in their papers. I mean, that they may not realize.
Would you feel comfortable being a little more specific?
Well, okay. For instance, the easiest example is that a lot of times bill collectors can send erroneous bills to clients, and if you're looking at the bill, maybe the credit card company overcharged you on interest, or they promised you some type of points, but they didn't deliver the points. There could be violations of Florida's Deceptive and Unfair Trade Practices. There could be violations of the debt collection acts. I mean, there's a number of ways to go through your personal affairs. I mean, everybody's got that box in their house, right? That they put in stuff the old mail, or like I said, that old partnership agreement, or the LLC operating agreement, that the limited liability company operating agreement that you didn't finish. These are great tools, and mind you, during this time, you have time in your hands to start looking at this and taking that ounce of prevention to see, everything from, who's doing some services for your personal home, and if they have insurance, or if they have their agreements with you in place. So there's a lot of things that we can do. I call it some maybe kind of spring cleaning, legally. But there's no shortage of things, no shortage of questions that people are going to have during this crisis. With
right, and as you're speaking, Jay, it occurs to me too that people who have current businesses may be served also to start getting around to their business architecture, right? So what do we mean by that? Building out the LLC, agreement, looking at things. So people sometimes think that the law is always, you're either on offense or defense. But sometimes it's really a preventative measures. It's really sort of a holistic preventive organization of your legal life and your business and all of these things. And I think that you spoke about the time that people will have on their hands. I think it's also a service to let people be aware that there are things that they can organize and tighten up and really think about how to get themselves going in the right direction business-wise once this all lifts. Because listen, we don't know when, but it's going to happen. We are going to resume our life activities. And I think it's, an ounce of prevention really goes a long way. And, right? I mean, what do you think?
Well, I you know what, let's take a break, and then on the other side of this break, we'll get into what does that look like as far as, filling in the blanks of an LLC operating agreement, or even instituting some litigation you've been pushing off for some time, or resolving something that's been on your plate for a little bit. So why don't we take a couple minutes here, and then we'll talk about that on the other side of this break.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks. Stay with us, everyone.
There is nothing business about getting defrauded. It is always personal. Did you know that there are special laws that allow victims of personal and business crime the ability to prosecute and collect money damages in court? These laws can triple the amount of damages you may be entitled to. Farrell Law Firm is a boutique firm that prosecutes business crimes in civil courts. At Farrell Law Firm, we support people to stand up to the bullies using unorthodox methods of legal practice, which focuses on urgency and the relentless obsession for justice. If you have been the victim of a business, personal crime, or fraud, give us a call today for a free confidential consultation. Farrell Law Firm, 954-252-9818. Again, if you have been the victim of a business, personal crime, or fraud, give Farrell Law Firm a call at 954-252-9818.
You have been watching The Verdict with Jay Farrell and Janine Davis. If you want to call into the show, you can reach us at 888-565-1470 or write us live on Facebook at The Verdict. Now, back to The Verdict.
And welcome back to the verdict, and your host Jay Farrow. And before the break, we were talking about some of the things that we can do now that we're all at home to start going through our lives and doing an inventory of our legal affairs. And I'm suggesting that a lot of the things that I've been speaking to people lately is about their partnership agreements. And when I was saying, I use terms and I use acronyms quite a bit. So LLC is a limited liability company, and a limited liability company uses what's called an operating agreement. And the operating agreement is really like the constitution of the company. I mean, it provides for everything related to how to hire and fire employees, officers and directors, who's on first, how decisions are made, how to hire professionals, even how to buy somebody out or to take on equity. And these are provided for by statute, and they really outline the organization of the company. And a lot of people like to start LLCs, but they never finish their LLCs by creating the operating agreement with their other partners or managing members. And time and again, I see that not taking that ounce of prevention ends up in litigation, and all of that could have been avoided with some clarity up front. So these are the types of things that if you have started a business recently, or if you started a business 10 years ago, it's a good time to start taking a look at, how am I operating the company, and do I want to make any changes? And these are things that you don't even need a lawyer for. I mean, this is just stuff that you can do by yourself. I mean, there's tons of information that's online, and obviously, to make sure that you're, completed it correctly, maybe have a lawyer take a look at it. But that's just one example of what you can do during this time that you have. Or, for example, if you wanted to start the business that you've been doing for some time, I mean, it seems to me that you can still go into the Secretary of State website and pay a filing fee and start a business. So there are things that are able to be handled during this time. Actually, there's not much that you couldn't do today that you couldn't do yesterday, other than go to the courthouse and meet in person. But there's all types of networking groups that have gotten together. I mean, not just now, but they're out there on Facebook. There are attorneys' web pages. There are the ability to have consultations with an attorney, just like on my computer right now. So, filling time during periods that we're all in a new normal. I mean, this is just some suggestions of what someone could do if they're so inclined to keep themselves legally healthy.
Right. I think, So thank you for pointing that out, because I want people, for us, it's important to also keep people abreast of the fact that there are so many things that can still be done, and to be mindful of your wellness all around. So it's not only the physical wellness, it's the wellness of your business as much as humanly possible. It's consulting with an attorney if you've been meaning to and haven't had the chance. It's taking the time to spring clean your life in many different areas, and that includes the law as well. So, Jay, moving forward, you did mention how, the law is leveraging technology. So telephonic hearings are going on. Remote mediations are going on. All of the things that go into all of the components of filing a lawsuit are all electronic, right? So there's an incredible amount of things that are still being able to be normalized underneath the conditions that we're experiencing now, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, well, there are some challenges. For instance, getting a simple notary now, it's like you would think that
right.
you don't really think about, and now it's like to get something notarized and to go someplace to have that happen, not necessarily. So what can you do? In some instances, you can do a declaration, or there are some. I believe there's a law firm that had made some suggested changes to the notary rules.
What is a declaration, please, so people understand?
A declaration is that I hereby swear and affirm that the above is true and correct under penalty of perjury. I mean, it's something to be mindful that when you're something to acknowledge, I should say, the veracity of what you're signing. I mean, it may not have the oath component, but it might suffice. For instance, like I had to file something the other day, and we needed a notary. And instead of taking that action, we came up with a way to make this declaration. And my co-counsel is working on this. So if you can imagine, there are instances in court where you have to file something notarized, and if it's not notarized, you can file what's called unverified answers to, let's say, interrogatories. But for the most part, I mean, the courts have done an effective job of allowing telephonic hearings. Now, there are challenges. We don't know what an evidentiary hearing is going to look like when actual witnesses need to be called. We don't know how a court is going to swear somebody in over the phone, although I've seen it done before. We don't know what it's going to look like, for the court reporters to not necessarily be, right there in the courtroom. That said, if this would have happened 20 years ago, we'd been in a lot more trouble. But now that everybody's
right,
the ability to have their phones and their computers hooked into a camera, we're in a better spot, and thank God for it. So there are challenges right now. Make no mistake. I mean, we don't know how a trial is going to take place when you have the ability to have someone called right there. I mean, I don't know of any place in the country, I don't think it's available in Florida, that a trial could happen remotely. But I know that the Florida Supreme Court and the Florida Bar and everybody's working on these issues right now. It's not insurmountable. It's not insurmountable whatsoever. But the challenge is going to be, I think, is that lawyers have gotten so used to being able to question a witness on the stand. And when you question a witness on the stand, you question someone in person, and you're cross-examining the witness. I mean, there's a certain human aspect to that, well, at least it was thought that something like that really allows the truth to come out. When you're, I'm thinking about the movie with Joe Pesci, My Cousin Vinny, and you think about his talent at cross-examination in that movie. So those are things that would be missed. Obviously, if this thing is going to last, I saw something on the news about 12 to 18 months, but who knows? So those are certainly the challenges. Now, like I said before, though, there are things, if we're going to talk about lawsuits, I mean, that plaintiffs or people can do, and that's for the preparation of paper discovery. I know for the last couple of months we've been working on a substantial amount of paper discovery, and that's when I say paper discovery. So when you're in a lawsuit, you're allowed to ask questions of the other side, asking for documents, asking for questions to be answered under oath, asking that a party admit a fact or deny a fact. There are written deposition questions that can happen. And so this is what I call paper discovery, because it doesn't involve calling a witness to a deposition. And so there's plenty of work to be done. And what I'm hoping to see, and what I'm inviting my opposition to, and lot of instances is how do we get this case resolved? And wouldn't it be great to use this as an opportunity for the people to really check in, to evaluate cases like never before, and seize opportunity for resolution? And there's a lot of uncertainty on both sides. I don't think that this necessarily favors any particular side. I mean, I think that I'm just going to use my computer here because I think that this doesn't necessarily favor either the plaintiff side or the defendant side when it comes to any of this, because if the defense were to delay a case unnecessarily using this crisis to their advantage, courts and judges, I mean, they're smart, and they can smell something like that happening from a mile away. And I can tell you this: if a party is unnecessarily using this crisis to not answer discovery or to not.
Right. So, speaking to that, Jay, like people using this crisis as a way to sidestep or delay justice.
Right. So, in any lawsuit, I mean, it's possible to delay proceedings through filing of objections. I mean, that are baseless. It's become a pretty common practice in some firms to just throw out an objection to a request for discovery that's otherwise legitimate, knowing that the court's going to take a couple.
In layman's terms, that's when the other side says, no, I'm not going to give it to you for some XYZ generic reason.
Right.
Okay.
And so, there's a lot of that goes on. But I would say this, that if a company or a person in this circumstance is going to use this opportunity to attempt to recreate the past, to fudge their books, to be very crafty with what they're going to turn over, thinking that the court or the other party is never going to get the information, I think that is going to be looked upon quite disfavorably by the courts as this goes along. So, I had this conversation with one of the lawyers the other day at the mediation, and I was saying that this may favor the defense in cases more than it favors the plaintiff, because the defendant can use this to delay the depositions or discovery. And then, it was pointed out that, if this is happening, the plaintiffs can file motions with the court indicating that the motivation behind what's the objection or the delay is really in effect to use this crisis as a tool. So I'd be very careful of that. So there are challenges now on both sides of litigation. I mean, that said, I think that, believe it or not, judges may be a little bit more available time-wise to manage their calendars. I don't know, and I say that because I don't know what's going to happen with the trials. So if there's not trials going on, I suspect there may be more time for what's called special set hearings to handle more of the meat and potatoes issues and cases.
So what usually is heard at a special set hearing outside of a regular hearing?
So a special set hearing would hear any matter before a court in a litigation that would take more than 5 or 10 minutes. The issues that can be handled in 5 or 10 minutes are just that. I mean, there could be any issue in the case, but there are issues and questions of law or fact that wouldn't necessarily consume the court's time, like simple motions to compel discovery, simple motions to dismiss, motions for extension of time might be those types of motions. But I'd say a motion for an appointment of a receiver in a case. I mean, I know that might take some time, especially if the company was substantial and otherwise, and I know that motions for summary judgment, which means that one side is saying to the court, there's no real issues of fact here, and the court can rule to judgment at a hearing. So those types of hearings that can dispose of the case or answer large questions in the case, I think there's going to be a lot more time for those matters to be heard. And I think that if you have a plaintiff that is diligent and resourceful, that they're going to be able to use this piece to their advantage. So, like I said, I mean, there's open questions. I mean, there's not an automatic of who's this going to work out for more. But using this crisis as a strategic tool, I think is going to be finding a lot of negative treatment in the court. And the other thing is, I just had a mediation scheduled in the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, and I imagine that's going to be telephonic, and that's going to be coming up in the next couple of months. And I like this idea of this telephonic mediations because it keeps the process going. And like I said, the other thing is the lawyers now to get to check in and say, what if, because I don't know what the next year is going to look like, I can't be the lawyer of yesterday.
Right. I think this is really calling for attorneys to be innovative.
Yes,
right?
I mean, everything what was yesterday is not happening today. So in under that context, I would suggest that, and I've already started to speak to some of my clients about this, and I certainly use this at the mediation, is that I can't advise a client as if everything is normal. I can't advise a client necessarily to pass up an offer that I would have advised them to pass up yesterday without taking into consideration the unknown of the virus. And I think this goes for any side of any lawsuit, is that you can no longer be the lawyer that's going to say, or with the mindset that a case can take 2 to 4 years, because we don't know how the cases could take. It could be that the judges come up with a way to push these cases forward like never before. It could be that the unknowns could be so great for a client that not advising them of this new normal, or under the context of new normal, could be malpractice. There are all kinds of consequences for litigation to be pending. There's all kinds of consequences, direct and indirect, when the litigation is pending against a company or against a person. Mental health is one of them, but the longer that certain litigation is proceeding against a corporation, it costs money, it costs all kinds of external things. So not checking in and going through your client roster and saying, okay, client A, I know I was giving you this advice 3 weeks ago, but let's talk about this, because I don't know when this is going to end. If this is going to go 18 months before I can take a deposition or even take this to trial or call witnesses at an evidentiary hearing, we're going to have an issue here. And I advise reaching out to the other side and maybe possibly offering a settlement or offering mediation. Or here's where I see things going. Because of the uncertainty here, I think that if the lawyers are truly resourceful, and I mean the lawyers on both sides, is to craft a informal but enforceable trial order, which would allow an agreement amongst the parties to allow witnesses to be called over Skype, Zoom, some kind of teleconference, allow certain decisions to be made by a third party that are binding upon the parties.
Please say a little bit more. What is a third party so that people may understand that a little bit better?
You could select a certified mediator to make decisions in a case if you want to. I mean, you could have your next door neighbor be the one that is the third party that is going to resolve disputes. You could have other lawyers that have nothing to do with the case serve as independent parties to resolve things. So imagine this: replace the court and the rules of civil procedure with a modified version of that, makeshift version of that, like a makeshift hospital, if you will, in order to get cases resolved. And I know this is completely outside the box and a lot unorthodox, but it's possible because there's nothing magical about court. This is why you can go to a mediation and have it resolved. The mediator is not a judge. The mediator is just simply a third party that's going to give their services and their perspective to try to resolve a case. And that person's likely a licensed attorney certified by the Florida Supreme Court or other court to do just that. There's nothing magical about court. There's nothing magical about the rules of civil procedure except for when you file a case, I mean, those rules apply. But there's nothing preventing us as lawyers to make an agreement with the other side that we're going to handle a case like this, that we're going to handle a case from soup to nuts like this. And I think we take one more break, and then on the other side, I want to talk more about this because this is where I really see if the lawyers dig deep and are willing to go for it and suggest this to the other side, come out with a trial order under these circumstances that, when I say trial order, that means that discovery is going to take place like this. We're going to allow video conferencing for depositions. We're going to allow a certain amount of time to respond to certain discovery, and we're going to cut out the nonsense. Those pillars of the case, like when a dispositive motion, like a motion for summary judgment, is going to be filed. I mean, come up with a trial order.
Please explain to the people who are listening what a dispositive motion is.
A dispositive motion is like a motion for summary judgment, a motion for judgment on the pleadings. In some instances, it's a motion to dismiss. It's a motion that can get rid of the case.
Okay, thank you. I think that hits the nail on it. Thank you.
So that's where I see, at least even for just the discovery, the in-person discovery, is that the parties come up with an informal agreement that they will allow depositions to take place over the computer, over the cell phone or a camera, with a court reporter in the room or in their room, and that would at least alleviate a lot of the questions. And here's another thing that I suspect. If one of the parties is going to attempt to do this and the other party says no, the other party can file a motion with the court asking for approval from the judge for certain things. And I think that the longer this goes on, the more inclined judges are going to be to allow unorthodox methods of taking discovery and allowing cases to proceed. Because I don't think you can suspend depositions indefinitely, because then you run into some significant problems, and then also with the calling of witnesses. But if the lawyers are sharp, and we go out there and we try to enroll the other side, and we bring it to the attention of the court, and they're just saying no for the purposes of saying no, I think that's also going to create a narrative that is not going to be favored by the court. And so I'm thinking outside the box, because
and I'd love for you to continue on this line of thinking outside the box. We have a break coming up, and I think it's really a service to people to hear of different ways that they can move on, because I know the weight in litigation is what really gets people. So we'll take a break. Thanks, everybody. Stay with us.
There is nothing business about getting defrauded. It is always personal. Did you know that there are special laws that allow victims of personal and business crime the ability to prosecute and collect money damages in court? These laws can triple the amount of damages you may be entitled to. Farrow Law Firm is a boutique firm that prosecutes business crimes in civil courts. At Farrow Law Firm, we support people to stand up to the bullies using unorthodox methods of legal practice, which focuses on urgency and the relentless obsession for justice. If you have been the victim of a business, personal crime, or fraud, give us a call today for a free confidential consultation. Farrow Law Firm, 954-252-9818. Again, if you have been the victim of a business, personal crime, or fraud, give Farrow Law Firm a call at 954-252-9818.
You have been watching The Verdict with Jay Farrow and Janine Davis. If you want to call into the show, you can reach us at 888-565-1470 or write us live on Facebook at The Verdict. Now, back to The Verdict.
And we're back with The Verdict. I'm your host, Jay Farrow. And, we were
and Janine Davis. Welcome back, everybody.
And we're coming to you live. Janine's on the phone, and I'm here at my home. And we are going through a couple of things. We see that how the court system is adjusting to this new normal. And I just have a couple of thoughts of where I see things going as far as the discovery process and the hearings and having witnesses called over Skype or Zoom and depositions taken by agreement amongst the parties. And I want to take this opportunity to say that anybody can write into us on Facebook and ask us any questions with what's going on out there, and we'll do our best to answer them and use us as a resource. We have dedicated the next number of weeks, months to supporting people of how to get through to negotiate through these waters and have your legal affairs handled in excellence and timely with urgency. The court system did not collapse. While the courthouses are closed, all of the judges are using this opportunity to have telephonic hearings, and we're moving forward. Luckily for us, everything is now electronic filing. Most everything is electronic filing, and so we're able to file lawsuits, we're able to file motions, we're able to file paper discovery and engage in the process. And so I know my colleagues have been busy. I've interacted with them all week long, and we're making the most of it. As a matter of fact, some of us are getting a lot more work done than we ever have without the phones ringing or the daily distractions that happen in an office. So, but yeah, feel free to reach out to us at The Verdict TV on Facebook, and we will support you in any way that we can.
Okay, Jay, thank you for that. And yes, please reach out to us. We are a resource to support people with any legal questions that they may have at this time. With any concerns, and even if we're not able to answer it, we can certainly be a resource for you to get the information that you need. Jay, prior to the break, you were talking about how you see the system moving forward. And I would just like to say that obviously we're never suggesting that there is a replacement for in-person interaction, right? I don't want anyone to misunderstand that. Rather, what I hear you saying, Jay, is that in lieu of that, which is the best thing, but in lieu of that, there are so many other things that we can be doing to push cases forward, to be of service to our clients. These are people who may be in litigation or may be forming a partnership agreement or have some sort of legal need that is still at the forefront of their mind. And we get to be mindful that attorneys provide an incredibly important albeit and a service-oriented business and service in general to the public. So I want you to take the floor.
Yeah, on that note, Janine, I was also talking to a group of lawyers and this last week, and we were talking about just that, is that there are going to be opportunities all over the place for lawyers to support people, especially people that can't necessarily afford legal fees, because there's a bunch of people out there with questions. And I know that we're all busy, but I know that taking a few minutes out of our day to answer some questions for some people that are writing to us on our website, or from our websites, that are have tremendous anxiety about their individual status, their family, their friends. I mean, there's also starting to be, and I heard about some stories already, that people are taking advantage of the situation to make money. And when I say take advantage, I mean, I heard about a guy that was selling toothpaste that he claimed could prevent the coronavirus. I'm hearing about certain people in very trusted positions asking for money for their churches and their otherwise during this time. And there's never going to be a bad time to stand up for your rights. I mean, there's never going to be a bad time to find your voice and to stand up for justice. And while we're not in our office, us lawyers are out here ready to answer questions. We're ready to support people with whatever they have going on. I mean, and it could go from anything from, things happening in their business or that they just got ripped off somehow, some way. And being vigilant and knowing
right,
that.
Because unfortunately, I think we will see, at least in the short term, an upspike of shady characters. Whenever there's a time of crisis, I think you see the two polarities really greatly. You see people really joining together and forming community, even with social distancing. People coming to each other's aid and protection, which is a beautiful side of what we get to witness. And then on the flip side, it's the opportunist for people who have a more nefarious nature to prey on the vulnerable. And I think that it's important that people are aware that we are here to support in that and to help and shoulder that with you, in the sense that you don't have to take it. You don't have to fall victim to people who are acting in ways that are taking advantage of a situation. It's not necessary. You still get to stand up for yourself.
This includes us lawyers. And I'm going to say this out here as well, because I've seen some lawsuits that have been filed lately that are just like. And I'm on this attorneys group on Facebook, and some of us just say this is the reason why people hate lawyers. I mean,
yes, indeed, absolutely.
People, filing lawsuits over toilet paper, or I heard some other things that just happened in federal court in the Southern District of Florida, and I'm just scratching my head. It's like, just because you can doesn't mean you should, and be mindful. Check in with yourself. I mean, this is not. I mean, like I'm giving out this advice. I'm taking my, take the advice. For me to take my own advice and saying, okay, this is why. We are making suggestions about how the law practice can be streamlined, can be effective during this crisis, and to be mindful of different things. But conjuring up, some fantastical lawsuits, I mean, maybe is not the time to be suing over how many pieces of toilet paper someone was given as opposed to somebody else. I'm not there. I don't know, but it's like, all of us are going through this, and I suspect in the next couple of weeks when we all start getting a lot of cabin fever, that there's going to be all kinds of stories of X, Y, and Z, and that's to be expected. I mean, like you point out, on both sides. And this is why I was hoping that this show could be a means to open up a space in that conversation of being better to one another. So we'll see you next week.
We will see you next week. Thank you for joining us. Stay safe.
Thank you for watching The Verdict. For more information about the show and your hosts, Jay Farrow and Janine Davis, please visit our website at www.theverdicttv.com or follow us on Facebook. The Verdict are live every Monday evening at 6 p.m. EST. See you next week.
Mom, can I have some